This show presents itself as a woke show, but is literally the opposite of woke. This show is asleep at the wheel. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ryan. Here today we're actually going to be talking about the show, Ginny and Georgia. So I bet you've seen this show floating around, especially after a comment in the show by the character Ginny about Taylor Swift went viral, which caused Taylor Swift to call Netflix out on the show. So you've probably heard of this show. Maybe you haven't, but I want to talk about it because the show presents itself as a very woke show. But after watching it, it was like anti-woke. And I would like to say before we actually really start with this video that I have no ill will towards the actors and the actresses of the show. Absolutely not. Especially with the thing of the actress who plays Ginny getting dragged because Ginny says a very sexist comment about Taylor Swift, causing the whole internet, especially Taylor Swift's fan base, to pretty much go in uproar and attack her. I personally think that's a very horrible thing to do because she's literally just an actress playing a character. If you really want to get mad at anyone, get mad at the writers. They wrote that line. And if there were any improvisations on the show, I doubt the actress would say something like that. So before we really dive into the show, I just want to say, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the show, watch the show. If you haven't seen the show and you don't want it to be like ripped apart, I guess don't watch this video. So the new Netflix original show, Ginny and Georgia, throws in a lot of buzzword political topics and kind of makes the show more about identity politics than it is about actually trying to weave a narrative. And just to paraphrase, identity politics are, quote, because I have it written right here, politics which a group of people have a certain identity who tend to promote their own interests without regard to the concerns of other political groups. But anyways, a basic premise of the show is about this woman named Georgia Miller who moves to Wellsbury, Massachusetts with her daughter Ginny and her son Austin. And Wellsbury is this very upper class, very white neighborhood town area. Before we really dive into the show, I just want to say one thing. It seems like the show actually got really hurt when it presented teen life. So this show is a teen drama, for sure. But it is very unrelenting in how it presents teenager life because there is a way that the teens should act and there is a way that the teens do act. And when they don't do how they should act, they get punished. Not punished by the characters, but punished by the show. And what I mean to say is when they do something bad, like lying or smoking or something of that caliber, something bad happens to them. An example would be, actually in the show, character Maxine. So she lies to her mom about going to see this movie, when really she goes to this party. And at the party, there's her love interest, and she gets really drunk and really screws it up with them. So the show punishes her for lying to her mom, especially since her character doesn't even seem to be like being rude or anything that would cause her love interest to really get mad at her. So when tackling topics such as teen life, racism, or even identity, and even abuse, you have to have complex, dynamic characters. However, most of the characters in the show are actually not fleshed out, and most of them fall into stereotypes, which is really detrimental. And here's the thing. There's a plethora of characters, and with most of them not even being fleshed out, that means most of them end up doing bad things. However, there is no explanation or nuance for why they do these actions. So I actually want to talk about some of the characters before we go into the plot. So let's start with the good. Georgia Miller. So she's the mom of Ginny and Austin, and personally I think she's like pretty much the only fleshed out character of the show. She seems to be a very complex character. And actually one of the big things that very much helps with that is the fact that we're actually given lots of flashbacks to see how she grew up, which allows us to see how she was molded into the character that we see in this present timeline. She presents herself as a sexy mid-30s housewife, but really she has the dark past where she was actually abused by her father and mother. And learning about her character background actually really fleshes out her character because you can see why she's adaptive and very intellectual, and she knows how to manipulate a conversation to her will. We can also understand her more bad decisions. Like an example would be she actually puts a lot of credit cards in her son's name. We also see that she dates a lot of men, and that's because she has lots of daddy issues. Her father was really abusive and mean to her and never showed her any warmth, And she also seems to actually suffer from mommy issues as well, as her mom wasn't really invested in her life, and she wants to do the opposite of that with her children, to make sure that they get the parental warmth that she never got. Now on to the bad. So, George's daughter, Ginny, she's the other main character of the show, and she really isn't a fleshed out character. She is the quote, I'm not like other girls character stereotype with no depth. When we first meet Ginny, we learn that she's a virgin, which is fine, but the way that she talks about it, it seems like she has a very negative view of it. And she also seems to have a very negative view of people who engage in copious amounts of sex, which includes her mom. However, this is actually very ironic because in the first episode, she has her first kiss and she loses her virginity all in one day, a person that she has only met once. So she also criticizes her mom about, quote, going through boys faster than Taylor Swift, which is, the comment that really blew up the internet, which is obviously very misogynistic, but also slut-shaming, which again is very ironic because she lost her virginity on the same day that she had her first kiss with a person that she has only met one time. This confuses me. It makes me wonder if this is bad writing of the show and the writers forgot that she did this, which would be very hard, obviously, because this is one of the very big driving things of the show, or if it's a character quirk that she is very hypocritical. She also goes out of her way to not like mainstream content. An example would be actually in a Halloween episode, her friends are coming up with a group costume idea, and when someone mentions the Avengers, she says that they're basic, or somehow not cool. She likes Billie Eilish, which she is made fun of because Billie Eilish music is alternative music. Ginny is also in a love triangle, which is a trope commonly associated with the I'm not like other girls trope as well. She has a choice between two people, and it's pretty obvious of what the two guesses are. A bad boy who wears all black and rides motorcycles, or a good boy who does well in school. And guess which one she's attracted to? Gonna let you guess. It's the bad boy, even though his character is actually severely underdeveloped as well. Also, this is just a general point that I don't like about Ginny. When she is actually dating the good boy, because she actually starts with dating the good boy, she starts texting the bad boy. Personally, I don't really like it, especially because she is leading on the good boy, which actually spotlights her hypocrisy, as she tells her mom later she goes through boys faster than Taylor Swift, yet Ginny is doing the exact same thing, running through boys quickly, except in this case, she's leading one on. Following Ginny is her love interest, Marcus, who is the bad boy character. So he doesn't actually start out as her girlfriend, as I have previously said, because Ginny's boyfriend at the beginning of the show is this good boy, whose name is Hunter. So Marcus is a bad boy character, yet he has very little depth to him. He states that he, quote, doesn't do girlfriends, which is perfectly acceptable. And the reasoning to this is actually because a year prior, his friend actually died because of cancer, which is obviously heartbreaking, but it seems to actually fetishize his grief. Because guess who can make him open up and talk about it? Ginny. Like, God. He is also actually a very creepy character, and the reason that he seems to only really get away with the fact that he does these unsettling things is the fact that he is attractive. An example is he climbs through Ginny's window, where the only interaction previously is where Ginny actually steals his motorcycle and then rides it, because why wouldn't the bad boy with semi-slicked back, dark hair, and wears all black not have a motorcycle? But anyways, he crawls into Ginny's room and he tells her he can't get her out of his head, which personally I think is super creepy as heck. And then they go and have sex. And here's the thing. It is both out of character for both characters because they are actually virgins, and even if it is in character for him to have sex with people after only meeting them once, it is very out of character for Ginny to do that, as just as the overall unsettlingness of this action, which he seems to only get away with because he is attractive. And I would also like to note that actually Ginny and Marcus are 15 at the time. So Wattpad, come get your boy. There are also other characters that I have some issues with, but they don't have enough screen time to allow an in-depth analysis of them, with only surface-level depth, which is an issue in and of itself. The first is a character that I have already kind of talked about, Ginny's friend, Maxi. She is this lesbian character who is very over the top, And there is actually a part in the show where she tells her friends that she wants a girlfriend, but not the other out lesbian at her school. She then calls that girl the D slur, which makes her straight friends laugh, which personally for me just felt very gross to do. Also, she has very cringy, over-exaggerated teen dialogue and slang, where there are massive amounts of it, and then there are periods of normal dialogue, which is just unrealistic to how teens talk. The next character is Ginny's boyfriend, Hunter, who is a very underdeveloped character, which makes it hard for you to feel bad for him when it is revealed to Hunter that Ginny and Marcus had sex, because you feel nothing for him, even though actually Ginny and Hunter weren't dating at the time. The only time he is really on screen is actually really to be a side character to Ginny, either being attached to her or doing something for her. The final character that I want to talk about is the character Abby. She's a character that the show cannot make up its mind about if she is a character with a plot arc or not, as she oscillates between the two, even though she deals with lots of issues that are pertinent topics in today's society. She deals with body dysmorphia, and then that plot drops to have another plot given to her, which is her parents are actually going through a divorce, which feels strange that her previous arc is actually dropped for this. These underdeveloped characters fail the plot because they are not complex enough for you to understand them when they do something or sympathize with them when something bad happens to them. However, that is actually not to say that the plot does not also fail the characters as well, as the plot does not dig deep enough into the issues that it presents. So the first topic that I want to talk about is abuse, which I think the show actually portrays very well. It turns out Georgia, who is actually named Mary, abused by her father and mother when she was younger, and then actually gets pregnant at 15 by this boy named Zion, and so she decides to run away from home to Zion's family to stay, and then actually runs away from Zion's family as well when the family tries to assume custody of her child. She actually also gets sexually harassed by her employer when she's young, and so it shows what great length she'll go to escape the abuse that she is facing. You see how this molds and shapes the character of Georgia, how she acts and why she acts. This allows you to understand questionable actions that she does do because you can understand where she is coming from based on her past. But now I'd like to talk about the bad. The first issue that I'd like to talk about is racism, which I am not an expert at writing, but as I was watching the show, I noticed that some things felt off. As stated before, the show is created by Sarah Lambert, a white woman, and actually the writers of the show are mostly white people with only 2 black people on the writing team. The way the story was written, it seemed like some of the writers were trying to solve their white guilt through these storylines, which seemed as deep as a plate of water. But to my point of how they talk about racism, they only present it on a surface level, without peering in or dissecting the issue. They toe the line with it with one-liners, especially from the show's English teacher, Mr. Gittin, and his talk about the N-word, which I think is obviously very spot on for a tone-deaf character, but there are also things that happen that really did not seem to have a lasting impact. One of them is how Ginny, who is biracial, has friends who want to touch her hair, and actually there's a part in the show where they try to brush her hair, and it does not go well. However, it is just about hair, and it doesn't dive deeper into the subtext of hair in black communities, with the only thing being stated is Georgia telling Ginny to not let other girls touch her hair. There are also blatant racist comments said throughout the show, like Ginny, as she's a biracial woman, being called exotic, as well as the touching on of racial profile, where Ginny is caught shoplifting, but they don't really delve into it and how Ginny feels. There's the whole oppression Olympics, which has been dragged all over the internet, as well as a poem that Ginny gives in her English class, which personally for me was very hard to determine what this poem was about. If it was about her being a biracial woman, or if it was about her not fitting in, or if it was about both. As I keep saying, they don't dive into this topic. They present it, but they do not dissect it, seeing how characters feel when they are treated in racist ways. And that's what I mean when I say the plot fails the characters. Because the plot does not give time for Ginny to explore her identity as a biracial woman, which they should have, as it would allow us to have a deeper understanding of Ginny. Also, I think they missed an opportunity to force white characters to deal with their white privilege. An example is when Ginny is caught shoplifting. One of her friends, Abby, who is white, does it as well, and isn't caught, because both Abby and Ginny are racially profiled. Abby is positively racially profiled, which allows the character to never have to confront her white privilege. So the next thing they cover is sex and sexuality, which makes sense as this is a teen show. However, it seems to criticize sexual habits, as well as portray actions in a misogynistic light for no apparent reason. An example of this is casual sex. There's a character named Padma who engages in casual sex with Marcus, which is absolutely fine, but the show flips it on its head when she is actually criticized by one of her friends, and the friend tells her they want what's best for her. This can be interpreted as the friend obviously trying to help save Padma from a boy who is bad for her, or this could be seen as a jab at casual sex. But since the show wants us to favor Marcus, it does seem like it is more of a jab at casual sex. So this kind of rubs me the wrong way. Here's why. Casual sex is totally fine. Your body, your choice. As long as you are safe, it's all good. I was actually surprised. I was like, yay, a character who is satisfied by casual sex. However, this show is about high school, and with high schoolers, it can get a little murky when it comes to casual sex, as one character or maybe both could be underage. While I think this is an issue, I think the main problem of the show is that it portrays casual sex as not fulfilling, which is actually wrong. Kinda. In a 2014 Business Insider article called Casual Sex is More Popular Than Ever in the US, and That Might Not Be a Bad Thing, by Pere and Stupinha, which I hope I'm pronouncing that name correct. In the article, it talks about an uptake of casual sex, and surprisingly, it is because there's greater acceptance of it in the media. They cite Professor Justin Garcia when it comes to actually how men's and women's views of casual sex are actually becoming very similar, with women looking for more non-committal sex. Garcia talks about how someone who deals with loneliness or depression can actually have a great benefit from casual sex. However, actually, on the flip side, someone who is very extroverted and doesn't actually deal with loneliness and depression can actually find negative effects. However, overall, Garcia does say that there is a net positive when it comes to casual sex. However, emotions could be conflicting, as they cite a study where 72% of women regretted at least one casual hookup, while actually 3% regretted several hookups. So it does seem like there is a net positive. Circling back to the point though, this show seems to be run by people in their late 30s, maybe early 40s, and they just aren't used to casual sex, and so they use these characters to convey how casual sex is bad, even though it's quite fulfilling. And now to the misogyny and slut shaming. So after Ginny has sex, she goes to get Plan B. And when she does this, a pharmacist who is a woman starts to make comments about her, making her feel bad about herself. Which, like, what? You're a pharmacist. You shouldn't really be making these comments to make this girl feel uncomfortable when she's buying Plan B. Which not only doesn't sit right with me, but it also doesn't sit right with Ginny. And so it seems like these inappropriate comments don't really have any structure. To continue, as I keep saying, you have probably, possibly, maybe, seen Taylor Swift called the show for making a sexist comment about her, saying how she runs through boys quickly, which is said by Ginny, which confuses me on why Ginny would say that, given her background. Her mother is very open about sex and seems to talk about it with her a lot, and also her mother doesn't bring down the hammer when she pretty much does engage in casual sex with Marcus in the first episode. Ginny could be uncomfortable with sex, which is totally fine, but she does seem to be open about sex and sexuality, as her best friend is a lesbian, Maxine, and there's also a part where she and her friends want adult content, which turns into a thing about how adult content is just for the male gaze. Ginny's actions seem opposite of her attitude, which makes her character seem like a very disjointed character, and it also seems like this show wants to have its cake and eat it too. To sum up, these writers had lots of opportunities to have lots of sex-positive talks, however, they failed at that. And this really sucks, as this show is a TV-14 show, which could have allowed a broader audience to have more open conversations about this topic. The next issue is self-harm, and I feel like this show glamorizes and romanticizes self-harm, which I hate. So the character Ginny, she harms herself by lighting her inner thigh. For starters, there isn't a consistent pattern of behavior for when she does this, so I cannot figure out what her triggers were for why she does this. And when given her reasoning, quote, She has these feelings that she feels will explode out of her, and burning concentrates it, like it is a release, and she feels better. And this seems to be a disservice to people who do suffer from self-harm. According to MHAnational.org, people who self-harm usually feel empty inside, lonely, unable to express their feelings, or not being understood by others, or adult responsibilities. And sometimes they might use this as a coping mechanism for painful feelings. And since Self-Harm Awareness Day was March 1st, I feel that is very pertinent that we do not glamorize this issue. Ginny doesn't really experience any warning signs that she might be self-harming. She does well in school, she has a job, she has a healthy social circle that she doesn't retract herself away from. So, why does she do it? What are these feelings? She doesn't seem empty inside, as she is never shown to experience depression or depressive episodes. She might be lonely to a degree as a biracial woman, but other black characters in the show do reach out to her, and this goes hand in hand with her being able to be understood by others. She is also able to express her emotions, both positive and negative, and she does do well with her adult responsibilities, as she does do well at her job and at school, excelling in both. She also doesn't seem to be using this as a coping mechanism either. So I am genuinely confused why she does this. Again, it feels like not delving into the character of Ginny does a disservice to people who do self-harm, and it seems like a quirky thing that she does, as she is already set up as the not like other girls girl. So by making Ginny not have that much depth, it makes it seem like self-harm isn't as big of an issue as it actually is. And overall, it feels poorly written. The last issue I want to talk about is body dysmorphia. So, as stated before, there's a character, Abby, in this show, and it is her who goes through this. However, really, it's only for 2 scenes. One of them is her taping her legs together, which is to presumably squeeze her skin together. The audience is led to believe that this is the cause, but it is never mentioned or expanded upon later. The second time is when she starts to act intimate with this guy after she lays her legs on him, after he calls her legs whale leg. Now, here's the thing. Dropping that plotline and giving her the new plotline of her parents divorcing is dumb and extremely harmful. According to multiple sources, such as BDD.iocdf.org, myclevelandclinic.org, and ncbi.nlm.nih.org, about 1 in 50 people experience BDD. Now, with only these 2 scenes, it feels like these writers presented this topic to seem woke instead of really addressing the issue. Abby doesn't have any symptoms that might cause a person to develop BDD, so I am confused on why she is dealing with this issue. And this reinforces the idea that the show cannot decide if she is a character or a character with a plot, nor can it decide what the plot is. Overall, the show fumbles the ball when it comes to serious topics, which results in a negative viewing experience for someone casually watching the show, and a detrimental experience for someone who is emotionally invested in the show. Georgia's mystery plotline was the most entertaining, as well as just Georgia herself, as she was the most fleshed out character, who got loads of development compared to Ginny, who is marketed as a main character. Throwing in loads of woke topics and not really diving into them or dissecting them is very disheartening, because it feels like this show really is just like, here are some teen topics, look at us being woke, when really they're tone deaf in understanding the gravity of these serious topics. The blatant pandering and not actual representation of these topics makes the show fall flatter than other shows with the teen drama formula. The show presents itself as a show dealing with complex topics. However, without complex characters, the facade of the show's wokeness quickly disappears to quickly reveal a show that is not like most others, as it is markedly worse. But as the title of this video says, opening a dialogue, if this show gets a season 2, I hope the writers take the time to investigate and dissect these issues that they present on the screen, so they can discuss the myriad of issues that people deal with regularly, bringing light to these important topics. If you stuck till the end, thank you so much. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Comment down below maybe what your favorite or least favorite thing about Ginny and Georgia was. But anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.